Hello friends. Welcome to the Ben 10 What Ifs. How are you all? So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Ben 10 unlocked the Infinity Omnitrix and got Harem of Gwen, Looma and Kai. Also be sure to subscribe and like this video. Now let's begin. Chapter 1. Infinity Protocol. The abandoned plumber outpost hummed with an eerie, pulsating energy that made the hairs on Ben Tennyson's arms stand on end. 3 years had passed since he'd last visited this facility, back when it had been fully operational and not overrun by Dr. Onimo's twisted experiments. Moonlight filtered through the shattered skylights, casting long shadows across equipment that now served as nesting material for creatures that defied taxonomic classification. Anything yet, Ben? Rook's voice crackled through the plumber badge clipped to Ben's jacket collar. Ben pressed his back against a cold metal wall, eyes scanning the darkness ahead. Nothing conclusive, but something definitely tripped those sensors. The energy signature matches Onimo's transmodulation tech. Be careful. The last time Onimo experimented with dimensional technology, Hal F of Seattle ended up overrun with inside-out squirrels. I remember. Ben's voice carried none of the cockiness that had defined his teenage years. At 19, experience had tempered his approach, lacing bravado with calculated caution. I've got 3 teams evacuating the surrounding 5-block radius. If this goes sideways, civilian safety is covered. A skittering sound echoed from somewhere deeper in the facility. Ben tensed, his hand hovering instinctively over the Omnitrix. The device had evolved alongside him over the years, its sleek black and green design now wrapping around his wrist like an extension of himself rather than an accessory. I think our guest of honor just arrived. Going silent. Ben muted his badge before Rook could protest. The facility's emergency lighting flickered, bathing the corridor in alternating darkness and sickly green illumination. Ben moved forward with practiced silence, his footfalls barely audible against the metal flooring. The layout as familiar enough. Central laboratory branching into research wings, typical plumber design, but the devastation made navigation challenging. Overturned equipment and structural damage created an obstacle course of technological debris. The skittering grew louder, accompanied by a wet, slithering sound that made Ben's stomach turn. Experience had taught him what that particular combination meant. Onimo had been hybridizing again. Come on, Doc, Ben muttered under his breath. Can't you ever just build a normal doomsday device like a respectable mad scientist? He rounded a corner and froze. The central laboratory had been transformed into something that defied conventional physics. Equipment hung suspended in midair, orbiting slowly around a pulsating tear in what appeared to be the fabric of reality itself. The rift shimmered with colors Ben couldn't quite name, radiating energy that made the Omnitrix on his wrist vibrate in response. And there, manipulating controls on a cobbled-together console, stood Drive. Onimo. The years hadn't improved his fashion sense. The same ridiculous helmet with protruding antennae sat atop his wild white hair, and his lab coat had seen better days decades ago. Tennyson. Onimo whirled around, his red eyes widening behind his goggles. Always interrupting at the critical moment. Can't you see I'm making scientific history here? Ben stepped fully into the laboratory, assessing threats with a quick sweep of his eyes. 3 hybridized creatures, part reptile, part insect, with an unsettling translucency to their flesh, crouched at various points around the room. The dimensional rift pulsed in sync with their movements, suggesting some biological connection. The only history you're making is adding another page to your prison record, Ben replied, circling slowly to keep all 3 creatures in view. What exactly are you trying to accomplish here, Onimo? Dimensional rifts aren't exactly your usual style. Onimo cackled, the sound bouncing unnaturally off the walls. My usual style. My dear boy, I've evolved beyond such limitations. Why conquer one dimension when the multiverse offers infinite worlds to rule? My trans-dimensional mutants will be the vanguard of my army. One of the creatures lunged without warning, covering the distance between them with unnatural speed. Ben's hand slammed down on the Omnitrix without hesitation, emerald light engulfing his form. The transformation took less than a second, a process that had become as natural as breathing. Diamondhead's crystalline body deflected the creature's attack, Azor sharp claws skittering harmlessly across the Petrosapian's diamond surface. Ben pivoted, using the creature's momentum against it, and sent it crashing into a bank of computers. Really, Onimo? Ben's voice resonated with Diamond Head's characteristic echo. Your pets are impressive, but we both know how this ends. Do we? Onimo's smile turned Ben's blood cold. My research has advanced considerably since our last encounter. Observe. The scientist twisted a dial on his makeshift control panel. The dimensional rift expanded suddenly, tendrils of energy lashing out like living things. One struck the creature Ben had just thrown, and to his horror, it began to phase in and out of visibility, its body seeming to exist in multiple places simultaneously. What have you done? Ben demanded, forming his arm into a diamond blade as the other two creatures began to approach. I've merely thinned the boundaries between realities, Onimo explained with the casual air of discussing the weather. My creations can now exist partially in adjacent dimensions, making them rather difficult to pin down. As if to demonstrate, Ben lunged at the nearest creature, his blade passing harmlessly through its partially phased body. It countered with a strike that felt solid enough, sending Ben skidding backward across the floor. One-way phasing, Ben muttered, regaining his footing. That's new, and merely the beginning. Onimo gestured grandly toward the rift. Soon, I'll bring through an army from across the dimensional spectrum, each one capable of. His monologue was interrupted by a crystalline shard embedding itself in the control panel, sending sparks flying. Ben followed up immediately, launching a barrage of diamond projectiles at the surrounding equipment. No, Onimo shrieked, diving to protect his technology. You fool! The dimensional stabilizers. The rift's pulsations became erratic, the energy tendrils whipping violently around the room. Equipment began to implode, crushed by sudden gravitational fluctuations. The creatures screeched in what sounded disturbingly like pain as their phasing accelerated, their forms blurring into streaks of motion. Onimo, shut it down! Ben shouted, creating a crystalline shield as debris flew around the laboratory. I can't. For once, the scientist's voice held genuine fear. The cascade effect. It's beyond my control now. The rift expanded rapidly, engulfing Onimo's console. The scientist barely managed to leap clear before his equipment vanished into the swirling vortex. The laboratory began to disintegrate around them. Chunks of ceiling and wall being pulled into the dimensional tier. Ben made a split-second decision, slapping the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. Another flash of green light transformed him into clockwork, the Chronosapien's mechanical body gleaming in the chaotic light of the rift. Everyone always forgets about the time manipulation, Ben said, his voice now carrying a mechanical tick-tock undertone. He raised his hands, directing his temporal energy at the rift, attempting to slow its expansion. For a moment, it seemed to work. The violent pulsation steadied, the destruction slowing. Then something went catastrophically wrong. The rift's energy collided with Clockwork's temporal field, creating a feedback loop that sent agony coursing through Ben's transformed body. Impossible, he gasped as warning alerts flashed across his mechanical vision. The dimensional energy is reacting too. The Omnitrix symbol on his chest began to pulse rapidly, flashing between green and a strange, shifting iridescence he'd never seen before. Ben felt the transformation destabilizing, but instead of reverting to human form, he experienced something entirely new, a sensation of high-s consciousness being simultaneously pulled in countless directions while remaining paradoxically centered. Omnitrix Infinity Protocol initiated, announced a voice that sounded like Azimuth's but somehow older, more resonant. Dimensional stabilization sequence engaging. What protocol? Ben managed to ask before his world exploded into light and sensation. He was everywhere and nowhere, experiencing existence through 1,000 alien perspectives simultaneously. Each of his transformations, every being whose DNA the Omnitrix had sampled, became briefly, intensely present in his consciousness. Not just their physical forms but their thoughts, instincts, and perceptions washed over him in a tsunami of awareness. Through this kaleidoscopic perception, Ben somehow maintained enough coherence to direct the combined energies outward, toward the rift. He felt Clockwork's temporal manipulation blending with Alien X's reality alteration, Feedback's energy absorption merging with Gravitak's gravitational control, all working in concert with dozens of other alien abilities he'd never accessed simultaneously before. The rift contracted, collapsing inward upon itself until it vanished. An implosion that sent one final shockwave through the laboratory. Ben fell to his knees, reverting to human form as the Omnitrix powered down, its surface now displaying unfamiliar symbols in a shifting, iridescent pattern before returning to its standard configuration. What just happened? Ben gasped, his body trembling from the aftereffects of whatever had just occurred. Tennyson. Onimo had somehow survived, though his creatures were nowhere to be seen. The scientist stared at Ben with an expression that, surprisingly, held more scientific curiosity than animosity. What did you do? That was not one of your usual transformations. Before Ben could respond, the remaining sections of ceiling gave way. He rolled aside as rubble crashed down, separating him from Onimo. Through the newly created opening, Ben could see the night sky above, and more pressingly, the structurally compromised state of the entire facility. This place is coming down, Ben muttered, struggling to his feet. The Omnitrix felt unusually warm against his skin, pulsing with subtle energy. He reached for it, intending to transform into XLR-8 for a quick escape, but hesitated. After what had just happened, he wasn't entirely sure what to expect. Necessity overrode caution. Ben activated the Omnitrix, selected XLR-8, and slammed down the core. The familiar green light enveloped him, but the transformation felt different. More fluid, more integrated. When it completed, he still stood as XLR-8, but with an awareness he'd never experienced before. I'm still me, Ben realized with shock. Typically, his transformations involved a partial merging of his consciousness with the instincts and thought patterns of the alien species. This time, however, he remained fully himself while simultaneously accessing XLR-8's kinesthetic knowledge and sensory experience. No time to analyze the change now. The facility was collapsing around him. Ben shot forward with XLR-8's characteristic speed, navigating the falling debris with precision. He caught a glimpse of Onimo disappearing down a side corridor but couldn't pursue. Structural integrity was failing too rapidly. Ben burst out of the facility moments before it imploded completely. Collapsing inward with a thunderous roar, he skidded to a halt several hundred yards away, watching as dust billowed into the night sky. Ben, do you copy? R.O. Ock's voice came urgently through the badge still clipped to his transformed body, another anomaly, as the badge usually vanished during transformation. I'm here, Ben replied, surprised to hear his voice carrying both XLR-8's sibilant quality and his own natural inflections simultaneously. Onimo escaped, but his experiment is neutralized. The facility is a total loss. Are you injured? Your vital signs are showing unusual patterns. Ben looked down at himself, noting subtle differences in his XLR-8 form, slightly altered patterning, enhanced musculature, and an iridescent shimmer to the black portions of his skin that hadn't been present before. I'm not injured, but something happened to the Omnitrix. Some kind of protocol activated. Ben tapped the Omnitrix symbol on his chest, expecting to revert to human form. Instead, he experienced another unique sensation, a partial shift that left him mostly in XLR-8 form but with elements of his human self more prominent. Okay, that's definitely new. Return to headquarters immediately, Rook ordered, concern evident in his voice. I am contacting Magister Tennyson. On my way. Ben focused, finding he could still access XLR-8's speed despite the partial reversion. He raced toward Plumber headquarters, mind racing with questions about what had happened to the Omnitrix. The trip that should have taken minutes seemed to pass in seconds. His enhanced speed making the city blur around him. When he arrived at the hidden entrance to the underground base, Ben finally managed to fully revert to human form, though not through the usual method. Rather than tapping the Omnitrix symbol, he found himself simply willing the transformation to end, the process feeling more like relaxing a muscle than activating a device. Rook was waiting in the main operations center, his orange feline features set in an expression of concern. Ben, what happened? The energy readings from your location were unlike anything we've recorded before. I'm not entirely sure. Ben looked down at the Omnitrix, which had returned to its standard appearance except for occasional flickers of iridescence beneath its surface. Onimo created some kind of dimensional rift. When I tried to contain it as clockwork, there was a reaction with the Omnitrix. It announced something called the Infinity Protocol, and then everything changed. Grandpa Max strode into the room, his weathered face serious. "I heard. Are you feeling any adverse effects?" Ben flexed his fingers, taking inventory of his physical state. "Actually, I feel fine. Better than fine. When I transformed just now, I remained completely conscious as myself, not like the partial awareness I usually have. And I could partially revert without fully changing back." Max and Rook exchanged concerned glances. "I've never heard of an Infinity Protocol," Max said. "That's not part of the Omnitrix specifications Azimuth shared with us." "Azimuth has been known to include features he does not disclose," Rook pointed out. Moving to a console to pull up Ben's biometric data. "The readings are extraordinary. Your neural patterns show significantly increased activity, particularly in areas associated with sensory processing and integration." Ben was about to respond when the Omnitrix suddenly pulsed with emerald light, projecting a small hologram above its surface. The image flickered for a moment before resolving into a miniature version of Azimuth, though something about the Galvan's appearance seemed subtly different, older, perhaps, or from a slightly different timeline. Omnitrix user Benjamin Kirby Tennyson. The hologram stated in Azimuth's distinctive voice. "If you are receiving this message, the Infinity Protocol has been activated in response to a dimensional incursion event. This contingency measure was designed to activate only in circumstances where the multiverse itself faces instability." "That's not our Azimuth," Max observed quietly. "The vocal patterns are different." The hologram continued. "The Infinity Protocol unlocks the Omnitrix's evolutionary potential, allowing for complete consciousness retention during transformation, partial transformation states, and the ability to access multiple alien DNA samples simultaneously in extreme circumstances. These abilities are necessary to address the threat that has triggered this protocol." Ben stared at the hologram in amazement. "Multiple transformations at once. Is that what happened when I contained the rift?" "Be warned," the Azimuth hologram continued as if anticipating the question. Had the dimensional instability which triggered this protocol is merely symptomatic of a larger multiverse-level threat. The Infinity Protocol will allow you to perceive and interact with dimensional anomalies that would otherwise remain invisible to you. Seek out the Forge Keys. They will be necessary when the time comes." "Forge Keys," Ben repeated. "What are those? And what larger threat?" The hologram flickered. "This message contains limited interactive capacity. Full briefing unavailable at this time. The Infinity Protocol will guide you toward the first key. Exercise caution, Ben Tennyson. The boundaries between realities have grown dangerously thin." With those cryptic words, the hologram vanished, leaving Ben staring at the Omnitrix in confusion. "Well," he said after a moment, "that was typically helpful. Azimuth never changes, even across dimensions, apparently." Max was already moving toward the central command console. "Rook, run a full scan for dimensional anomalies within a 100-mile radius. If this Infinity Protocol activated in response to Onimo's experiment, we need to make sure there aren't other breaches we're missing." "Already in progress, Magister." Rook's fingers flew across the controls. "I am detecting several minor anomalies, but they appear to be residual effects from the collapsed rift. However, there is one significant energy signature approximately 20 miles northeast of our position. It appeared approximately 3 minutes ago and has been growing steadily since." Ben studied the readout over Rook's shoulder. "That's near the old observatory. Abandoned for years now." Quote, "The pattern is not consistent with Dr. Onimo's technology," Rook noted, enhancing the scan. "This signature contains elements similar to those recorded during interdimensional transit via established methods. It appears something, or someone, is coming through intentionally." "Hostile?" Max asked, already reaching for equipment. "Unknown, but the approach vector suggests precision rather than random incursion." Rook looked up from the console. "Whatever is coming through knows exactly where it's going." Ben's hand hovered over the Omnitrix, which pulsed once in response to his proximity. "Only one way to find out. I'll check it out." "Not alone," Max said firmly. "Not after what just happened with the Omnitrix. Rook, assemble a team and..." An alert chimed from the console, cutting him off. Rook's eyes widened as he read the incoming data. "We have another situation developing. The dimensional anomaly has triggered automated defense systems at 3 different plumber outposts. They're registering it as an invasion force. Those systems are on a hair trigger after the Inkerseen incident last year, Max said grimly. If they launch a full counter-response against what might be a peaceful traveler. Ben made a quick decision. You and Rook handle the defense systems. I'll check out our visitor. If it's hostile, I'll call for backup immediately. Max hesitated, clearly torn between operational necessity and concern for his grandson. Fine, but you maintain constant communication, and at the first sign of trouble. I call in the cavalry. I know. Ben was already moving toward the exit. Besides, with this Infinity Protocol thing, I might have a few new tricks up my sleeve. That's what worries me, Max muttered, but nodded his approval. Be careful, Ben. The old observatory stood on a hillside overlooking Bellwood, its once impressive dome now weather-beaten and partially collapsed. In the moonlight, it had a forlorn, abandoned quality that made it the perfect setting for interdimensional visitors looking to arrive discreetly. Ben approached on foot, having parked his vehicle at the base of the access road. The Omnitrix pulsed occasionally, its surface periodically displaying the strange iridescent patterns he'd noticed earlier. As he drew closer to the observatory, the pulses increased in frequency. Something's definitely here, he murmured, activating his plumber badge to scan the immediate area. Badge, give me thermal imaging. The small device projected a holographic overlay that revealed a La heat signature moving inside the observatory dome. Humanoid, from what Ben could tell, and moving with purpose rather than confusion. Not the behavior of someone who had accidentally fallen through a dimensional rift. Ben considered his options. Previously, he might have immediately transformed into one of his stealthier aliens, Big Chill or Ghost Freak, to investigate unseen. But with the Omnitrix behaving unpredictably, perhaps a more cautious approach was warranted. He circled around to a maintenance entrance he remembered from a school field trip years ago. The door hung partially off its hinges, the interior beyond pitch black. Ben activated the flashlight function on his badge, casting a narrow beam into the darkness. The observatory's interior was a study in decay, peeling paint, water damage, and equipment long since stripped for valuable components. Ben moved silently through the ground floor, following the heat signature that now registered directly above him in the dome itself. A metal staircase spiraled upward along the wall. Ben tested the first step cautiously, wincing at a small creak. When no reaction came from above, he began to ascend, keeping his weight on the outer edge of each step to minimize noise. As he neared the top, voices became audible, or rather, a single voice murmuring in a language that sounded vaguely familiar though he couldn't place it. Ben paused, listening intently. The cadence reminded him of something he'd heard during an off-world mission with Rook, possibly one of the older Galvan dialects. Ben reached the dome level and crouched behind what had once been a control console for the telescope. From this vantage point, he could see the source of the heat signature, a figure in form-fitting armor of unfamiliar design, moving methodically around the room while consulting a device strapped to their forearm. The collapsed section of the dome allowed moonlight to spill into the chamber, illuminating the scene in silver-blue light. The figure reached up to remove their helmet, and Ben felt a jolt of recognition run through him. Kai, he whispered in disbelief. Kai Green had changed in the years since he'd last seen her. Her long black hair was now cut in a practical shoulder-length style with one side shaved close to her scalp. A thin scar traced a line from her left temple to her jawline. The armor she wore, a combination of what looked like plumber technology and something more exotic, hugged her athletic frame, various tools and weapons attached to strategic points. She was consulting what appeared to be a holog. Rafik map projected from her wrist device, muttering to herself as she made adjustments. Dimensional coordinates are correct, but the temporal alignment is off by at least 3 microcycles. If the artifact was transported here, the resonance signature should be stronger. Ben shifted his position for a better view, inadvertently causing a piece of debris to skitter across the floor. Kai reacted instantly, a weapon appearing in her hand with practiced speed. Her eyes, sharper, more experienced than Ben remembered, scanned the shadows where he hid. "Whoever's there, show yourself," she commanded, her voice carrying the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I'm not here to cause trouble, but I'm fully capable of defending myself." Ben considered his options. The direct approach seemed best, especially since she'd already detected his presence. He stood slowly, hands held away from his body in a non-threatening gesture. "Hello, Kai," he said, stepping into the patch of moonlight. "It's been a while." Kai's weapon remained trained on him for a moment before recognition dawned in her eyes. Ben Tennyson." The weapon lowered slightly, but didn't disappear. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," Ben replied, taking a cautious step forward. "Especially since our sensors show you came through a dimensional portal, not just the front door." Kai's expression shifted to one of careful neutrality. "You're monitoring dimensional incursions. That's new for Earth technology." "Not Earth technology, plumber technology." Ben tapped the badge on his jacket. "And you haven't answered my question. Last I heard, you were working with your grandfather on archaeological digs." "Not exactly the kind of work that involves dimensional travel and combat armor." A ghost of a smile crossed Kai's face. "People change, Ben. My work has evolved." She finally holstered her weapon, though her posture remained alert. "I'm tracking an artifact of significant importance. Its energy signature led me here, to this timeline." Timeline. Ben caught the specific word choice. "Not just this dimension. Both, actually." Kai moved to a different section of the dome. Consulting her scanner again. "I'm part of an interdimensional archaeological task force. We recover artifacts that have been displaced across realities, especially those with dangerous properties." Ben watched her work, noting the efficiency of her movements and the confidence with which she handled her equipment. This wasn't the Kai he remembered. This was someone who had seen and experienced far more. "And what exactly are you tracking now?" he asked, moving closer but still maintaining a respectful distance. Kai hesitated, clearly weighing how much to share. "It's called a forge key. One of 5 created by the Galvan thousands of years ago as part of a dimensional stabilization network. When used together, they can repair breaches in the multiverse fabric." Ben felt a chill run down his spine. Forge keys. The exact same term used by the Azimuth hologram. "What did you say?" Kai's attention snapped fully to him, her scanner temporarily forgotten. "You received a message from Azimuth about the keys." "Not exactly." Ben held up his wrist, displaying the Omnitrix. "About an hour ago, I encountered a dimensional rift created by Dr. Onimo. When I tried to contain it, the Omnitrix activated something called the Infinity Protocol. Afterward, a hologram that looked like Azimuth but different, told me to find the forge keys." Kai crossed the distance between them in 3 quick strides. Her scanner now aimed directly at the Omnitrix. The device emitted a series of tones as data scrolled across its small screen. "Impossible," she whispered, though the evidence clearly contradicted her assertion. "The Infinity Protocol is just a theoretical concept in my dimension. Azimuth theorized it but never implemented it due to the risks involved." "What risks?" Ben asked, suddenly concerned. "The Omnitrix contains DNA samples from across the universe, each with its own dimensional frequency." Kai's eyes remained fixed on her scanner readings. "The Infinity Protocol harmonizes those frequencies, essentially making you a multidimensional nexus point. It's why you can perceive things others can't, like me coming through the portal when your instruments would only detect an energy fluctuation." Ben processed this information, connecting it to his experience during the activation. "When it happened, I felt like I was experiencing every transformation simultaneously." "Is that related?" "It's exactly that." Kai finally looked up from her scanner, meeting his eyes. "The protocol allows your consciousness to remain dominant during transformation because it's anchoring the dimensional frequencies to your specific neural pattern. It's also why you can partially transform now. You're controlling the extent of the DNA expression." "You seem to know a lot about this," Ben observed. A shadow crossed Kai's face. "In my dimension, the Omnitrix was destroyed before the protocol could be implemented. We've been fighting a losing battle against dimensional incursions ever since. That's why I'm here, to find the keys before it's too late for this reality too." The implications of her words settled heavily between them. Ben was about to ask for more details when the Omnitrix suddenly pulsed with intense light, projecting a holographic map of the observatory and surrounding area. A pulsing point of light appeared approximately half a mile to the northeast. "That's," Kai began, comparing it to her own scanner. The forge key, Ben finished. The Omnitrix is tracking it too. A new alert chimed from Kai's wrist device. Her expression hardened as she read the information. We've got company. Something followed me through the dimensional aperture, a hunter-class entity. Designed specifically to track and retrieve artifacts like the key. As if on cue, a low, rumbling roar echoed from somewhere outside the observatory. The sound was unlike anything native to Earth, a combination of electronic distortion and bestial fury that made the decrepit structure around them vibrate. What exactly is a hunter-class entity? Ben asked, already activating the Omnitrix. A biomechanical construct created by the chronosapiens of my dimension, Kai explained quickly. Checking her weapons. They've been corrupted by an entity we call Tempest. The hunters can phase between dimensions and track energy signatures across realities. Tempest. The name triggered Ben's memory. Onimo mentioned something was manipulating him, pushing him to create the rift. It's starting here too, then. Kai's voice carried grim certainty. Tempest influences susceptible minds across dimensions, using them to weaken reality barriers. Once enough damage is done, it can physically manifest. Another roar, closer this time. The moonlight from the dome's opening was suddenly blocked by a massive shape. The hunter dropped into the observatory with surprising grace for its size, a 12-foot creature with a body that seemed to shift between solid matter and energy. Its four limbs ended in vicious claws that left scorch marks on the floor, and its featureless head swiveled toward them with predatory intent. I'll handle this, Ben said, the Omnitrix already cycling through alien options. You go for the key. That thing will tear through any transformation you throw at it, Kai countered, drawing her weapon. It's specifically designed to counter most alien species in the Omnitrix database. Maybe the standard versions, Ben agreed, selecting Diamondhead on the Omnitrix dial. But let's see how it handles the upgraded models. He slammed down the core, emerald light washing over him as the transformation took effect. The process felt smoother than ever before, his consciousness remaining fully intact as his body reconfigured into Diamondhead's crystalline form. But this version of Diamondhead was different, the crystal structure more complex, with iridescent patterns flowing beneath the surface like liquid light. Infinity Diamondhead, Ben announced, surprised to hear his own voice overlaid with the Petrosapien's resonant tones. That's new. The hunter roared again, its body fluctuating between solid and energy states as it assessed this new threat. Without warning, it charged, covering the distance between them with frightening speed. Ben reacted instinctively, raising a crystal barrier that erupted from the floor. The hunter phased partially through it, but Ben was already moving, his crystalline form flowing with unprecedented fluidity. He formed a blade along his arm and struck at the creature's semi-solid torso, enhanced crystal cutting through where normal Petrosapien material might have been resisted. The hunter screeched, its form becoming fully solid as it recoiled from the wound. Ben pressed his advantage, launching a barrage of crystal shards that forced the creature back toward the opening in the dome. Its phase ability has a recovery period, Kai called out, already moving toward the exit. Keep it solid and I'll go for the key. Go, Ben confirmed, generating a series of crystal platforms that bridged the gap to the hunter. He leapt across them with agility that Diamondhead had never possessed before, delivering a powerful blow that sent the creature crashing through what remained of the observatory wall. Kai disappeared down the staircase as Ben pursued the hunter outside. The creature recovered quickly, its wound already sealing as it stalked around Ben in a wide circle. Its form flickered, attempting to phase again. Not happening, Ben muttered, concentrating on a new aspect of his transformed state. He could feel the dimensional frequencies Kai had mentioned, vibrations that existed beyond normal perception. Focusing on these frequencies, he generated a field of crystalline energy that pulsed outward, temporarily stabilizing the local dimensional space. The hunter roared in fury as its phasing ability failed. It charged again, this time launching energy projectile, less from ports that opened along its flanks. Ben created a reflective crystal shield, angling it to redirect the blasts back at their source. Several struck home, staggering the creature. Ben took advantage of the moment to tap into another new ability, partial transformation. While maintaining Diamondhead's overall form, he shifted one arm into Heat Blast's magma composition, generating an intense beam of focused heat that struck the hunter's exposed flank. The combination of extreme heat and diamond hardness created a devastating effect, the creature's biomechanical armor warping and cracking under the assault. The hunter retreated, clearly reassessing its approach. It emitted a series of clicking sounds that Ben somehow understood were a form of communication. It was calling for reinforcements. "That's not good," Ben muttered, shifting his arm back to full diamond head form. He needed to end this quickly and join Kai in securing the key. The hunter suddenly charged again, but this time it was a feint. As Ben braced for impact, the creature veered away, racing toward the path Kai had taken. It had recognized the greater threat to its mission. "Oh no you don't." Ben slammed his hands into the ground, sending a wave of crystal erupting along the earth. The formation intercepted the hunter, encasing its lower limbs in diamond-hard material. The creature struggled furiously, its upper body twisting at impossible angles as it tried to free itself. Ben approached cautiously, aware that even restrained, the hunter remained dangerous. It proved his caution justified by sudden expelling a cloud of energy particles that began to rapidly corrode the crystal restraints. Adaptive countermeasures, Ben realized. Impressive. He needed a different approach. Concentrating on the Omnitrix symbol embedded in his chest, Ben initiated another partial transformation. This time, he incorporated elements of Feedback's energy manipulation abilities, creating conductive paths through his crystalline structure. As the hunter finally broke free of its restraints, Ben was ready. He charged forward, crystal hands modified with Feedback's energy-absorbing plugs. The moment he made contact with the hunter's fluctuating form, he began draining its energy, converting the dimensional power that fueled the creature into something he could control. The hunter thrashed wildly, its form destabilizing as Ben continued the energy drain. Within seconds, the creature's massive body began to collapse inward, its complex structure unable to maintain cohesion without its power source. With a final electronic shriek, it imploded into a singularity that vanished with a soft pop of displacing air. Ben stood motionless for a moment, processing what had just happened. The energy heat, absorbed coursed through his transformed body, enhancing his awareness of the dimensional frequencies around him. He could sense Kai's position a quarter-mile away, moving rapidly toward the key's location. He could also sense something else, 3 more dimensional apertures forming in the atmosphere above Bellwood. "More hunters," he murmured, reverting to his human form with a thought. The TRANS formation back felt as natural as the initial change had been. He activated his plumber badge immediately. "Rook, we've got incoming. 3-dimensional incursions above the city. They're after something called a forge key." "Acknowledged," Rook responded promptly. "We have detected the anomalies and are deploying countermeasures. Your grandfather suggests you focus on securing this key, if it is indeed what these entities seek." "Already on it. Kai Green is here." She came through a dimensional portal tracking the same artifact. "She's heading for it now. I'm moving to back her up." "There W." As a moment of silence before Rook responded. "Kai Green, the archaeologist's granddaughter. It's complicated," Ben replied, already running in the direction his enhanced senses had indicated. "I'll explain later." Tennyson out. He sprinted through the wooded area surrounding the observatory, following a path that seemed to glow faintly in his perception, a trail of dimensional energy leading toward the key. The Omnitrix pulsed in sync with his movements, occasionally projecting navigational markers that only he could see. The trail led to a small clearing dominated by what appeared to be an ancient meteorite impact crater, long since overgrown with vegetation. At its center stood Kai, her scanner aimed at a peculiar distortion in the air, a spot where reality seemed to fold in upon itself, creating a pocket of non-space that hurt Ben's eyes to look at directly. "Found it," Kai called without looking up as Ben entered the clearing. "The key is in a dimensional pocket. I need to match the harmonic frequency to extract it." Quote, "Better hurry," Ben replied, scanning the night sky. 3 more hunters just arrived. Plumber forces are engaging them, but they won't be held for long. Kai nodded, making rapid adjustments to her device. "Almost there. The Infinity Protocol should allow you to perceive the pocket clearly." "What do you see?" Ben focused on the distortion, allowing his enhanced perception to interpret the dimensional anomaly. The air shimmered and resolved into what appeared to be a small tear in reality, beyond which floated an object that defied easy description, a crystalline structure that somehow incorporated elements of technology, biology, and energy in a seamless whole. "It's beautiful," Ben said, struggling to find adequate words. "Like a piece of living technology. But more complex than anything I've seen before. It's rotating slowly, and there are symbols etched into its surface. They look Galvan, but older somehow." "Proto-Galvan script," Kai confirmed. "From before their technological renaissance. The keys were created during their early dimensional exploration era." Her scanner emitted a series of harmonic tones, and the dimensional pocket began to expand. Kai reached out carefully, her hand passing through the distortion as if through water. When she withdrew it, she held the key, about the size of her palm, glowing with inner light that pulsed in a complex rhythm. "One down, 4 to go," she murmured, carefully placing the artifact in a specialized container attached to her belt. The moment the key was secured, the Dimension L pocket collapsed with a soft implosion of air. "What exactly do these keys do?" Ben asked, eyes still on the sky for signs of the hunters. "Together, they form a mechanism called the Dimensional Forge," Kai explained. Already checking her scanner for pursuit. "It was created to repair damage to the multiverse fabric. The ancient Galvan foresaw the possibility of dimensional instability and created this failsafe. And Tempest wants to prevent the repair," Ben guessed. "Why? What does it gain from dimensional instability?" Kai's expression darkened. "In my dimension, we've learned that Tempest feeds on dimensional energy, specifically, the energy released when realities collide or collapse. The more damage to the multiverse, the stronger it becomes." A distant explosion illuminated the night sky above Bellwood, the plumber forces engaging the hunters. Ben's enhanced perception could make out energy weapons fire and the distinctive movements of the biomechanical creatures as they evaded attacks. "They've detected the key's activation," Kai said urgently. "We need to move. Once I've secured the key in a dimensional null field, they won't be able to track it." "Where?" Ben asked, already activating the Omnitrix again. "My ship. It's cloaked near the reservoir." Kai pointed northeast. "About 3 miles from here." Ben selected XLR-8 from the Omnitrix display. "I can get us there in minutes." The transformation washed over him, but once again with the enhanced awareness and control granted by the Infinity Protocol. This version of XLR-8 featured more streamlined armor, iridescent patterns flowing across its blue and black surface, and eyes that perceived far more of the electromagnetic spectrum than the standard transformation. "Infinity XLR-8, Ben announced, his voice carrying both his natural tones and the sibilant quality of the Kinesolaran species. "Need a lift?" Kai's professional demeanor cracked slightly, a ghost of a smile crossing her features. "That's new. The enhanced transformations in my dimension never stabilized properly." "Hold on," Ben advised, carefully lifting her in his arms. "This might feel a little strange with the dimensional frequencies in flux." "I've ridden dimensional currents between realities," Kai replied dryly. "I think I can handle superspeed." Ben grinned behind XLR-8's visor and accelerated, the world blurring around them as he raced toward the reservoir. The enhanced transformation allowed him unprecedented control and perception even at extreme velocities. He could see individual raindrops beginning to fall from gathering clouds, track the movement of nocturnal animals startled by their passage, and plot the most efficient route across the varied terrain. More impressively, he could perceive dimensional frequencies colored patterns overlaid on his normal vision. The strongest concentration centered on Kai, or more specifically, the contained key she carried, but he also noted fluctuations in the fabric of reality itself. Small tears and weaknesses that hadn't been visible to him before. "The damage is worse than I thought," he said as they raced along the edge of the reservoir. "I can see dozens of micro-fractures in local space-time." "It's the same everywhere," Kai replied, her voice clear despite the rushing air around them. "My dimension is about 3 years ahead of yours in the degradation process. Entire continents have been lost to dimensional collapse." The grim statement hung between them as Ben followed Kai's directions to a secluded cove. At first glance, the area appeared empty. But his enhanced perception revealed the outline of a ship approximately 30 feet in length, its hull designed to slice through both space and dimensional barriers with minimal disruption. "Impressive cloaking technology," Ben noted as he came to a stop beside the invisible vessel. I can barely detect it even with enhanced perception. Stealth is essential when Tempest has agents in every dimension, Kai explained as she keyed a sequence into her wrist device. The air shimmered, and the ship materialized, sleek, silver gray, with lines that suggested both Galvan and human design influences. A hatch opened in the underside of the hull, extending a short ramp to the ground. Kai stepped forward, then paused, looking back at Ben with an unreadable expression. You should come with me, she said after a moment. Your Infinity Protocol makes you uniquely qualified to help locate the remaining keys. My dimension has resources that could help you understand and control these new abilities. Ben considered the offer, aware of the implications. You're talking about leaving my Earth behind. Temporarily, Kai clarified. Time flows differently between dimensions. We could spend weeks in my reality and return mere hours after we left. Before Ben could respond, his plumber badge activated with an urgent alert. Ben, the hunters have broken through our defensive line, Rook reported. The sound of weapons fire in the background. They've changed course and are heading directly toward your position. They're tracking the key, Kai said grimly. The null field in my ship will block their sensors. But we need to get it inside now. Ben made a quick decision. Rook, tell Grandpa Max I'm pursuing these dimensional incursions to their source. Kai Green has critical information about what we're facing. I'll report in when I can. Ben, wait. Rook's voice was cut off as Ben muted the badge. I'll come with you, he told Kai, reverting to human form. But I need your word that we'll return once we've secured the keys. This is still my home dimension, and I have responsibilities here. Kai nodded solemnly. You have my word. The mission is to secure the keys and stop Tempest, nothing more. A roar from above announced the arrival of the hunters. 3 of the massive creatures descended through the cloud cover, their forms rippling with dimensional energy as they detected the key's signature. Time to go, Ben said, following Kai up the ramp into the ship. The interior was compact but efficiently designed, clearly built for functionality rather than comfort. Kai moved immediately to the pilot's station, her hands flying over controls that responded to both touch and thought. Secure the key in the null field chamber, she instructed, pointing to a recessed alcove near the rear of the cabin. Second panel on the right. I'll get us airborne. Ben did as instructed, watching as the container Kai had used to transport the key was automatically integrated into a larger system that pulsed with energy. The moment the connection was complete, he felt a shift in the dimensional frequencies around them. The key's signature vanished from his perception. They won't be able to track it now, he confirmed, returning to the front of the cabin as the ship hummed to life. Through the viewports, Ben could see the hunters circling above, their sensors scanning frantically for the signature that had abruptly disappeared. The ship rose silently from the ground, its cloaking field reactivating to render it invisible to conventional detection. They can still track the dimensional wake of the ship itself, Kai warned, her hands dancing across the controls. We need to make the jump quickly. The hunters suddenly ceased their circling, all 3 turning simultaneously toward the cloaked ship. They had detected something, perhaps the subtle disturbance in the air as the vessel ascended. Hold on, Kai advised, activating a sequence that caused the ship's engines to emit a high-pitched whine. Dimensional jump in 3, 2, 1. The world outside the viewports seemed to fold inward, reality itself compressing into a single point of brilliant light. Ben felt a momentary sensation of existing in multiple places simultaneously, similar to his experience when the Infinity Protocol activated, but more controlled, more directed. Then they were through, emerging into a sky unlike any Ben had seen before. The stars formed unfamiliar patterns, and 2 moons hung in the heavens, one silver-white like Earth's, the other smaller and tinged with amber light. Below them stretched a cityscape that combined futuristic architecture with elements Ben recognized from various alien worlds he'd visited. Welcome to my dimension, Kai said, guiding the ship toward the city. Specifically, the Interdimensional Archaeological Authority headquarters in what used to be called Bellwood. Ben stared at the transformed landscape of his hometown, noting both similarities and stark differences. The familiar hills remained, as did the general layout of the city, but everything else had evolved in ways he couldn't have imagined. How far ahead did you say your timeline was? He asked, trying to process the scope of the changes. About 3 years in terms of dimensional degradation, Kai replied, but culturally and technologically, we're loser to 20 years ahead of your Earth. After the first major dimensional incursion, technological development accelerated dramatically, partly from necessity, partly from access to alien knowledge that your dimension hasn't encountered yet. The ship descended toward a complex of buildings that seemed to shift and reconfigure subtly as they approached, adaptive architecture responding to environmental conditions and security protocols. The Authority coordinates interdimensional research and defense across what remains of our Earth and allied dimensions, Kai explained as she guided the ship into a docking bay that opened to receive them. We've been searching for the forge keys for nearly 2 years. You're the first breakthrough we've had in months. As the ship settled into its berth, Ben felt the weight of the situation settling over him. What had begun as a routine mission against Drive, Onimo had escalated into a multidimensional crisis with implications he was only beginning to understand. The Infinity Protocol, the Forge Keys, Tempest, all pieces of a puzzle that spanned realities. So what happens now? He asked as Kai powered down the ship's systems. She turned to face him. Her expression a complex mixture of determination, hope, and something else Ben couldn't quite identify. Now, she said, we find the remaining keys before Tempest's forces do. And then we save the multiverse. She paused, the ghost of a smile crossing her features. Just another day for Ben Tennyson, right? Despite the gravity of the situation, Ben found himself returning the smile. Some things never change, even across dimensions. As the ship's hatch opened to reveal the bustling activity of the Authority headquarters, Ben felt the Omnitrix pulse against his wrist, a reminder of the power and responsibility he now carried. The Infinity Protocol had transformed not just his alien forms but his perception of reality itself. Whatever challenges lay ahead in this unfamiliar dimension, he would face them as he always had, one transformation at a time. Only now, those transformations held possibilities he was only beginning to understand. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, Tetraman Trials. The Interdimensional Archaeological Authority headquarters hummed with activity that felt both familiar and alien to Ben. Technicians and researchers moved with purpose through corridors that figured themselves based on traffic patterns. Holographic displays projected real-time data about dimensional stability across multiple realities. Despite the advanced technology, Ben recognized the underlying structure of Plumber organization, methodical, hierarchical, focused on protection. Most of our senior staff were plumbers before the dimensional crisis, Kai explained as she led him to a security checkpoint where invisible scanners analyzed their molecular structure. The Authority evolved from the Plumber organization after the first major incursions 5 years ago. Ben Abso. RBED the differences between this reality and his own. The personnel represented dozens of species working together with an efficiency that surpassed anything he'd seen in his dimension. More striking were the dimensional stabilizers positioned throughout the facility, devices that emitted a barely perceptible hum, maintaining local reality against what appeared to be constant pressure from outside forces. Your transformation is drawing attention, Kai noted quietly. She was right. Throughout the command center, eyes followed their progress, some curious, others wary, a few openly hostile. N's enhanced perception caught whispered conversations. Infinity Protocol, impossible, too dangerous. I take it the Ben Tennyson of your dimension isn't around anymore, he surmised, keeping his voice low. Kai's expression tightened momentarily. He disappeared during the Chicago collapse 3 years ago. The Omnitrix was believed destroyed. Before Ben could press for details, they head their destination, a circular chamber dominated by a 3-dimensional mapping system that displayed what appeared to be the local multiverse. Hundreds of glowing orbs represented different dimensions, connected by threads of varying thickness and color. Nearly a third of the orbs appeared damaged or darkened entirely. Lost dimensions, came a gravelly voice from the far side of the room. Each one representing billions of lives. Countless species, entire histories, gone. The speaker stepped into the light, a weathered Galvan riding a hovering platform that brought him to eye level with the humans. Unlike Azimuth, this Galvan's skin had a grayish cast, and cybernetic implants were visible along one side of his face. First thinker Redvik, Kai acknowledged with a respectful nod. Our mission was successful. We've secured the first forge key. The Galvan's eyes narrowed as they fixed on Ben. And you've brought a dimensional anomaly with you. Fascinating. The Infinity Protocol actually stabilized in his reality. You know about the protocol? Ben asked. I helped design it, Redvik replied, guiding his platform closer to inspect Ben more carefully. Alongside my counterpart in your dimension, Azimuth, I presume. The integration appears seamless. Your dimensional frequency has been harmonized across the full spectrum. Which means, Ben prompted, which means you can pay. Receive and interact with dimensional boundaries in ways most beings cannot, Redvik explained, circling Ben with clinical interest. You exist simultaneously across multiple frequency bands. Quite remarkable. Kai cleared her throat. The key is secured in my ship's null field. What's our next move? Redvik reluctantly turned his attention from Ben to the holographic display. According to our latest calculations, the second key should be located in one of these 7 dimensions. 7 orbs illuminated more brightly in the display. However, pinpointing its exact location will require. An alarm cut through the conversation. Red light pulsing throughout the chamber. The dimensional map flickered momentarily before stabilizing to show a new incursion point forming near one of the highlighted dimensions. Inkerseen battleship, reported a technician at a nearby console. Signature matches the Imperial flagship. It's on an intercept course with dimension K-16. Koros, Redvik identified the threatened dimension. The Tetraman homeworld in that reality contains a nexus point, a dimensional weak spot that would accelerate collapse if breached. Ben stepped forward, studying the tactical display that had replaced the dimensional map. Why would the Inkerseens target a dimensional nexus point? I thought Tempest was directing them. Strategy, Kai explained grimly. Force us to defend multiple fronts simultaneously while hunting for the keys. Classic divide and conquer. Redvik manipulated controls on his platform, bringing up additional data. We don't have the resource to mount a defense of Koros while continuing the search for the remaining keys. Then we split up, Ben suggested. Kai continues tracking the next key while I help defend Koros. Alone? Kai asked skeptically. Against an Inkerseen battle fleet. Not alone, came a new voice. Deep, powerful, distinctly female. All heads turned toward the chamber entrance where a towering figure stood. Early 8 feet tall with crimson skin and 4 powerfully muscled arms, she wore battle armor that bore the marks of recent combat. A jagged scar ran from her left temple down to her jaw, and her yellow eyes burned with controlled fury. Princess Looma Red Wind, Redvik acknowledged. We received your transmission but didn't expect you personally. The situation demanded it, Looma replied, striding into the chamber with the confidence of someone accustomed to command. Her 4 eyes swept the tactical display before settling on Ben with an expression of surprise. Tennyson, impossible. You died during the Chicago collapse. Different dimension, Kai explained quickly. His Omnitrix activated the Infinity Protocol successfully. Looma studied Ben with renewed interest. Then the rumors of dimensional duplicates are true. She approached him, standing close enough that Ben had to tilt his head back to meet her gaze. Do you possess 4 arms in your transformation repertoire, Ben Tennyson? I do, Ben confirmed. Though it's been enhanced recently. A smile spread across Looma's face, predatory yet somehow appreciative. Good. My people are under attack. The Inkerseen's Avenue deployed some new weapon that our warriors cannot counter. I came seeking the authorities' help, but perhaps fate has delivered something better. A single asset, even with the Infinity Protocol, cannot turn the tide of a planetary invasion, Redvik cautioned. Perhaps not alone, Looma agreed. But the name Ben Tennyson still carries weight among my people. His presence could rally the fragmented resistance and buy us time to evacuate the dimensional nexus point. Ben considered the tactical situation displayed before them. The Inkerseen forces were concentrating their attack on a IFIC region of Koros, presumably the location of the nexus point Redvik had mentioned. I'll go, he decided. If there's even a chance I can help, I have to try. Then I'm coming too, Kai said firmly. The key we found was being guarded by a complex defense system. If the Inkerseens are targeting Koros, they might be after another key. Looma's upper right hand curled into a fist. Your assistance is welcome, archaeologist. But understand that Koros is a war zone. It is no place for those untrained in combat. Kai's expression cooled. I've survived dimensional collapse events that would make your warriors tremble. Princess, I can handle myself. The tension between the two women was palpable. Ben stepped between them, metaphorically if not physically, given Looma's imposing height. We need to focus on the common enemy, he reminded them. How soon can we depart for Koros? Immediately, Looma answered. My ship is prepared for return transport. I came only to request reinforcements. Redvik manipulated controls on his platform, bringing up a more detailed scan of the Inkerseen fleet. Our latest intelligence suggests Emperor Milius is personally commanding this attack. Exercise extreme caution. If you encounter Galvan technology in Inkerseen hands, document it if possible. We need to understand how they've acquired such advancements. We'll report what we find, Kai promised. Already retrieving equipment from a nearby storage unit. She selected a specialized scanner and what appeared to be a weapon of unfamiliar design. One more thing, Redvik added, his tone grave. Our dimensional stabilizers indicate that Koros is approaching critical instability. If the nexus point is breached, you'll have approximately 6 hours before total dimensional collapse. After that, escape may be impossible. Looma's expression remained stoic, though Ben noticed the slight tightening of her lower fists. My people are prepared for that possibility. Many have already been evacuated to our colony worlds. Then we'd better not waste any time, Ben said, checking the Omnitrix. The device pulsed with that now familiar iridescence, as if sensing the coming challenge. Looma's ship proved to be a stark contrast to Kai's sleek, technologically advanced vessel. The Tetraman craft was essentially a weaponized battering ram, all angular surfaces, reinforced armor plating, and obvious weapon emplacements. Its interior reflected Tetraman values. Practical, durable, designed for warriors rather than comfort. Impressive, Ben commented as they boarded. Remen, DS me of a Tetraman vessel I saw once in my dimension, though yours has clearly seen more action. This ship has participated in 17 major battles and countless skirmishes, Looma stated with evident pride as she took her position at the command station. It will serve for 17 more, if fate allows. The ship's crew, a complement of 6 battle-hardened Tetramans, regarded Ben and Kai with undisguised curiosity. Clearly, the arrival of a dimensional duplicate of Ben Tennyson was significant news, even in the midst of war. All systems operational, Princess, reported one warrior. His scarred face a testament to previous conflicts. Dimensional drive is primed for the return jump. Proceed, Commander Gorvin, Looma ordered. Maximum combat readiness upon arrival. As the ship powered up, Ben felt the now familiar sensation of dimensional energy building around them. Kai moved to stand beside him at one of the viewports, her expression thoughtful. You've fought alongside Tetramans before? She asked quietly. A few times, Ben confirmed. Though in my dimension, my history with Looma is complicated. Kai raised an eyebrow. Complicated how? Before Ben could elaborate, the dimensional drive engaged, enveloping the ship in a field of shifting energy. The transition felt rougher than it had in Kai's vessel, more like being forcibly dragged through reality than sliding between dimensions. When the energy field dissipated, the view outside the viewport had transformed dramatically. Gone was the orderly cityscape of Authority headquarters, replaced by a torn landscape beneath an angry red sky. Koros spread out below them, a world of rugged mountains, vast deserts, and fortress cities carved from living rock. And descending from orbit, clearly visible even at this distance, came the Inkerseen battle fleet, dozens of ships arranged in attack formation around a massive flagship. They've brought their entire third battle group, Looma observed grimly. And something new. She indicated several smaller vessels of unfamiliar design escorting the flagship. Unlike the typical amphibious-inspired Inkerseen craft, these ships featured sleek lines and an iridescent hull material that reminded Ben of Galvan technology. Those aren't standard Inkerseen vessels, he noted, studying their configuration. The design language is all wrong. Precisely why we needed the authorities' help. Looma confirmed. They appeared in our space 3 solar cycles ago. Our conventional weapons barely damaged them, and they carry some form of energy weapon that passes through our strongest shields. Quote, the ship shuddered suddenly as its defensive systems automatically engaged. Energy beams from one of the strange vessels had locked onto them as soon as they emerged from the dimensional jump. Evasive pattern Krell, Looma commanded. Get us to the capital fortress. The pilot executed a series of maneuvers that would have incapacitated anyone without exceptional physical resilience. Ben and Kai were thrown against the bulkhead despite bracing themselves. The Tetraman crew, naturally more durable, merely adjusted their stance to compensate. Through the viewport, Ben could see the capital fortress of Koros, an immense structure that seemed to grow organically from a mountain peak. Its ancient stones were scorched from recent attacks, but its foundations remained unbreached. Hundreds of Tetraman ships engaged the Incursine forces in the skies above, creating a chaotic battlefield of energy weapons, explosions, and debris. The dimensional nexus point is located beneath the fortress, Looma explained as they descended toward a concealed landing bay. It's why our ancestors built the capital there. They sensed its power even without understanding its true nature. How are your people holding up? Ben asked, noting the defensive emplacements and the coordinated response of the Tetraman fighters. We are Tetramans, Looma replied simply. We do not yield easily. But this enemy, she paused, her four hands clenching simultaneously. They possess technology that should not exist in this dimension. My warriors fight and die bravely. But courage alone cannot overcome such advantages. The ship landed with a bone-jarring impact in a fortified hangar carved from the mountain itself. Dozens of Tetraman warriors moved purposefully through the space, preparing ships for battle or tending to the wounded from previous engagements. Come, Looma directed as the hatch opened. The War Council awaits. The interior of the fortress reflected traditional Tetraman aesthetics, austere, functional, built on a scale that dwarfed human proportions. Ancient weapons and battle trophies adorned walls of red stone, illuminated by cries. Tallene light sources that cast deep shadows. The group passed training areas where young warriors honed their skills, medical chambers where the wounded received treatment, and command centers where tactical officers monitored the ongoing battle. Ben observed everything with keen interest, noting both similarities and differences to the Koros he had visited in his own dimension. Here, the traditional warrior culture appeared to have evolved in response to the dimensional crisis. He saw evidence of advanced technology integrated with ancient practices, and warriors of all genders appeared to serve equally in combat roles. They reached massive doors emblazoned with the symbol of the Red Wind clan, four swords arranged in a cross pattern. Tetraman guards stationed on either side straightened to attention at Looma's approach, pounding their upper fists against their chest armor in salute. Princess, acknowledged the senior guard, his scarred face registering surprise at the sight of Ben and Kai. The council did not expect you to return with humans. Not just any humans, Looma corrected. This is Ben Tennyson, bearer of the Omnitrix from an adjacent dimension. And Kai Green, dimensional archaeologist with the authority. The guard's four eyes widened slightly. Tennyson lives in another reality. The prophecies of the Eternal Warrior speak of such possibilities. Prophecies can wait, Looma replied curtly. The battle cannot. Announce us to the council. The massive doors swung open to reveal a circular chamber dominated by a stone table where 6 Tetraman elders sat in deliberation. Holographic displays showed the ongoing battle above the fortress, with real-time tactical data updating continuously. The elders, 3 male, 3 female, all bearing the scars of countless battles, looked up as the group entered. Princess Looma returns, announced a central figure, a female Tetraman whose armor bore the markings of the War Queen. Despite her advanced age, she radiated a physical power and authority that commanded immediate respect. And she brings strangers to our War Council during our darkest hour. War Queen Vexara, Looma addressed her with a formal salute. I bring allies with capabilities that may turn the tide of this conflict. Ben Tennyson, wielder of the Omnitrix, and Kai Green of the Interdimensional Authority. Murmurs spread among the elders. One massive male Tetraman rose from his seat, his upper right arm replaced by a mechanical prosthetic. Tennyson, he growled, the shapeshifter who died in the human dimension. I saw his fall with my own eyes during the Battle of Chicago. I'm from a parallel dimension, Ben explained, stepping forward. In my reality, the dimensional crisis is just beginning. I've come to help. Prevent what happened in your world from repeating in mine. The War Queen studied Ben with ancient, knowing eyes. The Omnitrix. Show it. Ben raised his wrist, displaying the device. It pulsed with iridescent energy, responding to the heightened dimensional energies present in the fortress. It has evolved, observed another elder. The Infinity Protocol has been activated. Which is precisely why I brought him. Looma interjected. His enhanced transformations may be effective against the Incursines' new weapons. Vexara's expression remained skeptical. One warrior, even one with the Omnitrix, cannot change the course of this invasion. With respect, War Queen, Ben replied, I'm not just offering combat support. I have experience fighting Incursines in my dimension, and I've eloped strategies against their standard tactics. If these new ships are using technology they shouldn't have access to, I might be able to identify weaknesses others have missed. A distant explosion shook the chamber. Dust falling from the ancient ceiling. One of the tactical displays flickered momentarily before stabilizing to show a new wave of Incursine fighters approaching the fortress. We have little choice but to accept any assistance offered, said the elder with the prosthetic arm. The evacuation of the civilian population is only 60% complete. We need time. Vexara considered for a moment, then nodded sharply. Very well, Tennyson, you will join our frontline defenders. If your transformed state can withstand their energy weapons, you may buy our people precious time. She turned to Kai. And you, archaeologist, what do you offer our war effort? Information, Kai answered confidently. If the Incursines are targeting this location because of the dimensional nexus point, I need to determine if there's another reason, specifically, if there might be a forge key hidden here. Forge key, repeated one of the elders, leaning forward with interest. Explain this term. As Kai provided a concise explanation of the keys and their significance, Ben studied the tactical displays more carefully. The Incursine attack patterns seemed focused on a specific section of the fortress, an area that, according to the schematics, lay directly above the dimensional nexus point. They're not trying to destroy the fortress, he realized aloud, interrupting the discussion. Look at their attack vector. They're creating a funnel pattern, concentrating fire to open a specific path to the lower levels. Looma moved to his side, examining the display. He's right. Isn't a standard Incursine assault formation. They're being surgical, not indiscriminate. Because they want something specific, Kai concluded, joining them at the display. War Queen, has anything unusual been discovered near your dimensional nexus point? Any artifacts, especially of Galvan origin? Vexara exchanged glances with the other elders, a silent communication passing between them. Finally, she gestured to one of the younger council members, who activated a secure display panel embedded in the stone table. 3 cycles ago, before the Incursine attacks began, our scientists detected an energy signature emanating from within the Nexus chamber, Vexara explained as an image appeared, a crystalline structure similar to the forge key they had recovered on Earth, but with different markings. This object materialized within the dimensional flux. Our attempts to retrieve it have failed. The energy field surrounding it repels all who approach. Kai leaned closer to the image, her eyes widening. That's definitely a forge key. The configuration matches ancient Galvan design principles, and the markings are consistent with what we found on Earth. Then we have our answer, Ben said grimly. The Incursines aren't trying to destroy the Nexus point, they're trying to retrieve the key. But how would they even know about its existence? Asked the elder with the prosthetic arm. The key appeared only days before their attack. Tempest, Kai suggested. If it's manipulating events across dimensions, it could have directed the Incursines here specifically to retrieve the key. Another explosion, closer this time, rocked the fortress. Warning alarms blared throughout the chamber as one of the tactical officers rushed in. War Queen, the Incursines have breached the outer defenses on the eastern approach. They've landed ground forces and are advancing toward the Nexus chamber entrance. Vexara rose to her full height, her ancient frame still imposing. Mobilize the Royal Guard. Seal all approaches to the lower levels. She turned to Looma. Princess, take Tennyson and deploy where you deem most effective. If his transformations can counter their weapons, use this advantage decisively. And the key, Kai pressed. If I can reach the Nexus chamber, I might be able to retrieve it. I have equipment designed specifically for handling dimensional artifacts. I will assign warriors to escort you, Vexara decided. But understand this, if the fortress falls, we will collapse the Nexus chamber rather than allow the key to fall into enemy hands. The resulting dimensional instability will destroy this entire region, possibly the planet. A last resort, Looma clarified, seeing Kai's alarm. One we hope to avoid through victory rather than sacrifice. Ben activated the Omnitrix, cycling through his available transformations. We should move now, while we still have defensible positions. Kai, focus on getting to the key. Looma and I will handle the Incursine advance. The War Queen observed this exchange with a calculating gaze. You take command naturally, Tennyson. Let us hope your tactical instincts match your confidence. I've been GHTING invasions since I was 10 years old, Ben replied without boasting, simply stating fact. Different dimension, same enemies, similar stakes. This earned him a nod of acknowledgement from Vexara. Go then, fight with honor. The fate of Koros rests upon your actions this day. The corridors leading to the eastern defensive line echoed with the sounds of battle, energy weapons discharging, orders being shouted. The heavy footfalls of Tetraman warriors rushing to their positions. Looma led Ben through the chaos with the assured confidence of someone who knew every passage of the fortress by heart. The Incursines will have deployed their elite shock troops first, she explained as they ran. Cybernetically enhanced soldiers equipped with phase shields and energy lances. Behind them will come the standard infantry, effective in numbers but individually less dangerous. And their new weapons? Ben asked. What exactly are we facing? Energy projectors that bypass conventional shields and armor, Looma replied grimly. The beam appears to shift between different frequency bands, making it impossible to block consistently. It's not Incursine technology, it's too elegant, too efficient. They reached a massive armory where Tetraman warriors were equipping themselves for battle. Looma selected a massive war hammer that would have been impossible for a human to lift, testing its balance with practiced ease. Transform, she instructed Ben. Let us see this enhanced forearms you mentioned. Ben nodded, activating the Omnitrix and selecting the Tetraman DNA. The familiar green light enveloped him. But as with his previous transformations under the Infinity Protocol, the process felt more controlled, more integrated. When the transformation completed, Ben stood in a form that was recognizably forearms but with significant differences. The musculature was more defined, the skin a deeper crimson with iridescent patterns flowing beneath the surface. Most noticeably, his size had increased, standing nearly as tall as Looma herself, and the Omnitrix symbol on his chest pulsed with dimensional energy. Infinity forearms, Ben announced, his voice carrying both his own inflections and the deeper resonance of a Tetraman warrior. The Tetramans in the armory paused in their preparations, staring at Ben with expressions ranging from awe to skepticism. Looma circled him slowly, assessing his transformed state with a professional eye. Impressive, she finally declared. Your physical parameters exceed standard Tetraman norms. The dimensional energy in Ration is visible even to unaided perception. She handed him a smaller war hammer, still massive by human standards. Can you maintain full consciousness in this form? Ben tested the weapon's weight, finding it perfectly balanced for his transformed body. Complete awareness. I retain all my human knowledge and experience while accessing Tetraman instincts and abilities. Good, Looma approved. You'll need both to survive what comes next. A thunderous explosion shook the fortress, much closer than the previous impacts. Dust and small debris rained from the ceiling as alarm klaxons blared through the corridors. Eastern barrier has been breached, came a shout from further down the passage. All warriors to defensive positions. Looma's expression hardened into battle readiness. Time to prove your worth, Tennyson. Follow me and try to keep up. She charged forward with surprising speed for her size, Ben matching her pace easily in his enhanced Tetraman form. They raced out corridors that grew increasingly damaged, passing wounded warriors being evacuated from the front lines. The sounds of battle grew louder, energy weapons discharging, the crash of hand-to-hand combat, orders shouted above the chaos. They emerged onto a wide battlement that had once been an interior wall but was now exposed to the harsh Koros atmosphere due to battle damage. Below them stretched sea, head a vast courtyard now serving as a battlefield. Dozens of Tetraman warriors engaged an Inkerseen assault force that pushed relentlessly forward despite heavy resistance. Ben immediately spotted T. He elite troops Looma had described, larger than standard Inkerseens, their bodies enhanced with cybernetic components that glowed with an unsettling bluish energy. They wielded weapons unlike any Inku. Arshan technology Ben had encountered before, elegant rifles that fired beams of shifting polychromatic energy, cutting through Tetraman armor with frightening ease. Those weapons, Ben said, focusing his enhanced perception on their design. The energy signature matches Galvan phase shift technology, but weaponized in ways I've never seen before. Can you counter it? Looma asked, already preparing to join the battle below. Ben studied the energy pattern, utilizing the Infinity Protocol's enhanced perception. Maybe. The beams are cycling through different dimensional frequencies, that's why they bypass your shields. But if I can match the frequency pattern. He didn't finish the thought, instead leaping from the battlement directly into the center of the battlefield. The impact of his landing created a shockwave that staggered nearby combatants on both sides. Ben immediately engaged the nearest elite Inkerseen, moving with a speed and precision that belied his massive form. The Inkerseen fired its phase weapon, the beam cutting toward Ben with lethal intent. Rather than dodging, Ben concentrated on the dimensional frequencies he could perceive with his enhanced senses. His transformed body began to emit a counter-frequency field, visibly rippling the air around him. The energy beam struck this field and scattered, dissipating harmlessly. The Inkerseen had only a moment to register surprise before Ben closed the distance between them, delivering a devastating four-armed strike that sent the trooper flying backward into its companions. Their weapons shift through 15 distinct frequency bands. Ben called out to Looma as she joined the battle, her warhammer creating havoc among the Inkerseen ranks. The pattern repeats every 3 seconds. Time your attacks accordingly. Looma acknowledged this information with a nod, adjusting her battle rhythm to strike during the brief vulnerability windows Ben had identified. The other Tetraman warriors, seeing Air Princess fighting alongside the transformed Ben, rallied with renewed vigor. Ben found himself falling into a natural combat partnership with Looma. Her fighting style complemented his, where she employed raw power and sweeping attacks to create openings. He utilized precision strikes against vulnerable points he could perceive with his enhanced senses. Together, they pushed back against the elite Inkerseen troops, forcing them to adjust their tactics. They're adapting, Ben warned as the Inkerseen commander ordered a formation change. Preparing to concentrate fire, the elite troops formed a firing line, their weapons charging simultaneously. Ben could see the energy building to levels that would overwhelm even his counter-frequency field if they all fired at once. Cover, he shouted to the Tetraman warriors. But there was nowhere to shelter in the exposed courtyard. Making a split-second decision, Ben slammed all 4 hands into the stone floor, channeling energy through his transformed body in a way that should have been impossible for a standard Tetraman. The stone rippled like liquid, then erupted upward to form a barrier wall between the Tetraman forces and the Inkerseen firing line. The concentrated energy barrage struck the hastily created barrier, superheating the stone instantly. Cracks formed across its surface, but it held long enough for the Tetraman warriors to reposition. Looma stared at Ben in amazement. How did you? Partial transformation, Ben explained quickly. I incorporated some of Gravitax's matter manipulation while maintaining forearm strength. The Infinity Protocol allows for combined abilities. Before Looma could respond, a new sound cut through the battle noise, a high-pitched whine that made Ben's enhanced senses tingle with warning. Looking up, he saw one of the strange non-Inkerseen ships hovering directly above the courtyard, a weapon port on its underside beginning to glow with building energy. Everyone out of the courtyard! Ben shouted, recognizing the signs of an imminent bombardment. That's a dimensional destabilizer, it'll tear apart the local space-time. The Tetraman warriors began a fighting retreat toward the inner fortress. But the Inkerseen forces pressed their advantage, cutting off escape routes. Looma stood her ground, rallying her troops to form a defensive perimeter. We cannot retreat, she called back to Ben. If they breach this position, they'll have direct access to the lower levels, to the Nexus chamber. Ben assessed the situation rapidly. The ship above them was seconds away from firing. The Inkerseen ground forces were advancing, and the Tetraman warriors were at risk of being caught in the dimensional weapons effect. "Get your people behind me," he ordered Looma, his mind racing through possibilities. "I'm going to try something that might either save us all or go spectacularly wrong." Looma didn't question him, immediately relaying orders to her warriors. As the Tetramans formed up behind Ben's position, he focused on the Omnitrix symbol embedded in his chest. The dimensional energy flowing through his transformed body responded to his concentration, pulsing more intensely. "Partial transformation," Ben muttered, reaching deep into the Omnitrix's database. "Chromastone's energy absorption, feedback's energy redirection, maintained through 4-arms physical structure." The ship fired. A beam of pure dimensional energy lanced downward toward the courtyard, the air itself seeming to warp and tear around its path. Ben raised all 4 arms, his transformed body shifting subtly as crystalline patterns formed across his red skin and energy conductors manifested along his forearms. The dimensional beam struck Ben directly. For a moment that stretched into eternity, the energy coursed through his hybrid form, threatening to tear him apart at the molecular level. Pain beyond description flooded his consciousness, but Ben maintained focus, directing the dimensional power through pathways created by his partial transformations. Then, with a roar that combined determination and agony, Ben redirected the energy, not back at the ship, but into a dome-shaped field that expanded outward from his position, encompassing the Tetraman warriors while pushing back the Incursine forces. The field rippled with the same frequency pattern as the elite troops' weapons, neutralizing their effectiveness within its range. The ship above attempted to adjust its weapons frequency, but Ben adapted faster, maintaining the protective field while advancing toward the Incursine line. Looma immediately recognized the opportunity, leading her warriors in a coordinated charge that broke through the momentarily defenseless enemy formation. "Push them back to the breach point," she commanded. "Don't allow them to regroup." The tide of battle shifted dramatically. Without their advanced weapons advantage, the elite Incursine troops found themselves outmatched by Tetraman's strength and battle prowess. Ben maintained the protective field while simultaneously engaging enemies, his enhanced 4-arms form moving with a fluid grace that belied its massive size. As the Incursines began a fighting retreat toward the fortress breach, Ben's communicator activated with Kai's voice cutting through the battle noise. "Ben, I've reached the Nexus chamber, but I'm not alone. There's an Incursine infiltration team approaching from another entrance. They must have breached the lower levels during the main assault. They're using the frontal attack as a diversion," Ben realized. "Looma, can your warriors handle the remaining forces here?" Looma smashed an elite trooper with her war hammer, the cybernetic enhancement sparking as the Incursine collapsed. "We have the advantage now. Go. Protect the key." Ben nodded, dropping the protective field as he sprinted back toward the fortress interior. Behind him, Looma led her warriors in a devastating counterattack that drove the remaining Incursines into full retreat. The path to the Nexus chamber took Ben through increasingly ancient sections of the fortress. The stone here was different, darker, with faint luminescent veins running through it that pulsed in time with the dimensional energies he could perceive. The air grew thicker with energy that made his transformed skin tingle with each breath. "Kai, status," he called into his communicator as he descended a spiraling staircase that seemed to have been carved from a single massive stone. "6 Incursine special operatives," came the tense reply. "They've breached the outer chamber. I'm barricaded in the Nexus room with 3 Tetraman guards, but their weapons are ineffective against the Incursines' phase tech. The KEY is still suspended in the energy field. I can't reach it without specialized equipment." "Hold position," Ben instructed. "I'm almost there." He reached the bottom of the staircase and found himself in a vast underground cavern. The architecture here was distinctly different from the fortress above, more organic, with flowing lines that suggested it had been grown rather than built. At the center of the cavern stood an ornate doorway sealed with energy barriers and guarded by fallen Tetraman warriors. Beyond that doorway would be the Nexus chamber where Kai was trapped. And approaching that same door from an adjacent tunnel came the Incursine infiltration team, 6 figures in specialized armor moving with the precision of elite operatives. Ben didn't hesitate. He charged directly at the Incursine team, using his enhanced perception to identify the leader, slightly larger than the others, with more elaborate armor and a commanding posture. Special delivery for Emperor Milius, Ben called out, deliberately drawing their attention. One Tetraman-sized problem. The Incursines spun toward him, weapons raised. Unlike the troops in the courtyard, these operatives carried more specialized equipment, including what appeared to be dimensional phase shift devices that would allow them to bypass the energy barriers protecting the Nexus chamber. Tennyson. The leader's voice held genuine surprise. Impossible. You were eliminated in the Chicago event. I get that a lot in this dimension, Ben replied, continuing his advance. Want to see how impossible I am up close? The Incursines opened fire simultaneously, their weapons discharging the same frequency-shifting energy beams that had been so effective against the Tetraman defenses. But Ben was prepared this time, adjusting his counter-frequency field to match their pattern precisely. The beams dispersed harmlessly against his transformed body as he closed the distance. The Incursines barely had time to register their weapon's failure before Ben was among them, his forearms striking with devastating precision. The leader proved more skilled than his team, evading Ben's initial attack and activating some form of personal phase shift device. His body became partially transparent as he attempted to slip past Ben toward the Nexus chamber entrance. Not happening, Ben growled, concentrating on his own dimensional perception. He reached out and grabbed the phase-shifted Incursine, his enhanced form allowing him to interact with the operative despite his altered state. Your dimensional frequency is still perceptible to me. The Incursine struggled in his grasp, genuine fear replacing the earlier confidence. What are you? The Tennyson we fought never had these abilities. Let's just say I'm a new and improved model, Ben replied, deactivating the operative's phase device with his free hands. Now, who sent you after the key? Was it Milius, or something else? Something called Tempest, perhaps. At the mention of Tempest, the Incursines' expression shifted to one of religious awe. You speak the name of the great unifier. Then you must know we cannot fail in our sacred duty. The key must be delivered to prepare for the convergence. Convergence. Ben pressed, maintaining his hold on the increasingly agitated operative. What convergence? Before the Incursine could answer, a deafening alarm echoed through the cavern. The energy barriers protecting the Nexus chamber entrance flared brightly, then began to fluctuate wildly. Ben. Kai's voice came urgently through the communicator. Something's happening to the Nexus point. The key is responding to some external stimulus. The dimensional barriers are destabilizing. Ben knocked the Incursine operative unconscious and sprinted to the entrance. The energy barriers parted at his approach, recognizing the dimensional frequency of his transformed state as compatible. The Nexus chamber beyond was breathtaking, a perfect sphere carved from living crystal, with the dimensional Nexus point visible as a swirling vortex of energy at its center. Suspended within this vortex floated the forge key, similar to the one they had recovered on Earth but with distinct markings and a deeper amber coloration. Kai stood at the edge of a platform extending toward the Nexus, her specialized equipment deployed but clearly malfunctioning. The three Tetraman guards maintained a defensive perimeter, though their attention was divided between the entrance and the increasingly unstable vortex. The dimensional frequencies are shifting too rapidly, Kai explained as Ben joined her on the platform. Something external is interfering with the Nexus point, probably that ship we saw earlier. If they destabilize it completely. Dimensional collapse, Ben finished grimly. Just like Retvik warned us about. He studied the swirling vortex, utilizing his enhanced perception to analyze the frequency patterns. The disturbance wasn't random. It followed a specific sequence that seemed designed to extract the key from its suspended state. They're trying to pull the key out remotely, he realized, creating a dimensional harmonic that will eject it from the Nexus point, which will destabilize this entire region in the process, Kai added, potentially triggering a chain reaction across the planet. Ben made a quick decision. Quote, I need to enter the vortex and retrieve the key directly. My transformed state should withstand the dimensional energies long enough to reach it. That's insane, Kai protested. Even with the Infinity Protocol, the raw dimensional energy in there could tear you apart at the molecular level. Do you have a better idea? Ben countered. Because in about 30 seconds, that remote extraction is going to succeed. And then we're all facing dimensional collapse anyway. Kai hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. If you feel the transformation destabilizing, get out immediately. The key isn't worth your life. Noted. Ben agreed, though they both knew he had no intention of retreating if there was even a chance of success. Ben approached the edge of the platform, focusing his enhanced perception on the swirling energies before him. The vortex pulsed with increasingly erratic patterns as the external interference intensified. At its center, the forge key seemed to flicker between states of existence, responding to the attempted extraction. "Here goes everything," Ben muttered, and stepped into the vortex. Dimensional energy engulfed him immediately, assaulting his transformed bod. Why with forces that should have torn him apart instantly. Pain beyond description flooded his consciousness as competing realities tried to claim him, each dimensional frequency pulling in a different direction. But the Infinity Protocol responded, his transformed state adapting to the chaotic environment. The iridescent patterns beneath his Tetraman skin glowed more intensely, creating a protective field that harmonized with the surrounding energies rather than resisting them. Ben pushed forward, each step requiring immense effort as he fought against the dimensional currents. His enhanced perception allowed him to see pathways through the chaos, lines of stability that existed for microseconds before shifting to new configurations. The key floated tantalizingly before him, now only feet away but separated by dimensional barriers that constantly formed and dissolved. Ben reached out with all four arms, focusing his consciousness on maintaining dimensional coherence as he pushed through the final barrier. His hands closed around the key. The moment of contact sent a shock wave through the vortex, the key's energy signature resonating with the Omnitrix in a way that momentarily stabilized the surrounding dimensional chaos. "Got it," Ben called, though he wasn't sure if his voice could penetrate the vortex. Pulling back now, retreat proved more difficult than advance. The external interference had intensified. The remote extraction process fighting against Ben's possession of the key. He felt himself being pulled in multiple directions simultaneously, the dimensional currents threatening to tear him apart. In desperation, Ben focused on the Omnitrix symbol embedded in his chest. "Emergency dimensional stabilization," he commanded, hoping the device would understand his intent. The Omnitrix pulsed once, then released a wave of emerald energy that expanded outward, temporarily imposing order on the chaotic dimensional forces. In that moment of stability, Ben launched himself backward, erupting from the vortex to land heavily on the platform where Kai waited. "Ben!" She rushed forward as he collapsed to one knee, his transformed body showing signs of strain. Flickering between solidity and energy states as the dimensional exposure took its toll. "Take the key," he managed, holding out the artifact with a trembling hand. "My transformation is destabilizing." Kai quickly secured the key in her specialized containment unit. The moment the artifact was safely enclosed, the nexus point began to stabilize, the chaotic energies gradually returning to their natural state. Ben focused on maintaining his transformation long enough to exit the chamber. "We need to get this back to Looma and the others. If the Incursines realize we've secured the key." As if on cue, a massive explosion shook the chamber, stone dust raining from the ceiling. The Tetraman guards moved to defensive positions as Kai helped Ben to his feet. "The ship must have detected the key's removal," she said urgently. "They're targeting the entire chamber now." "Scorched earth policy," Ben agreed grimly. "If they can't have the key, they'll destroy it, along with half the planet." Another explosion, closer this time. The crystal walls of the chamber began to crack, dimensional energy leaking through the fissures in alarming quantities. "We need to move," Ben insisted, RCing himself upright despite the instability of his transformation. "If that nexus point ruptures completely, the dimensional collapse will be catastrophic." They made their way back through the entrance, past the unconscious Incursine operatives, and toward the spiraling staircase. Each step was a struggle for Ben, his transformed state fluctuating between solid and energy forms as the dimensional exposure continued to affect him. "Your transformation is breaking down," Kai observed with concern. "You need to revert to human form." "Not yet," Ben insisted. "4 arms durability might be the only thing keeping me intact right now. The dimensional energy saturated my cellular structure. Reverting might spread the instability to my human form." They reached the upper levels to find the fortress in chaos. The Incursine forces had withdrawn, but their ship continued bombardment from orbit, systematically targeting structural weak points. Tetraman warriors evacuated civilians while MBAT engineers attempted to reinforce critical areas. Looma found them near the War Council chamber, her armor scorched and dented from intense fighting. Tennyson, you have the key. Kai patted the containment unit at her hip. Secured. But Ben was exposed to raw dimensional energy in the process. He needs medical attention. Later, Ben dismissed, though his voice fluctuated between his own and the Tetraman's deeper tones as his transformation continued to destabilize. We need to evacuate. The Incursines are trying to collapse the dimensional nexus point now that they can't have the key. Looma's expression hardened. My warriors are evacuating the civilian population, but we're running out of time. The structural integrity of the fortress is failing faster than anticipated. As if to emphasize her point, a section of ceiling collapsed nearby, narrowly missing a group of Tetraman civilians being guided toward the evacuation ships. War Queen Vexara has ordered the activation of the dimensional buffers. Looma continued. They will temporarily contain the nexus point's collapse, but they require manual activation from the control center. Where is the control center? Ben asked, already guessing the answer. The uppermost tower, Looma confirmed, pointing toward the peak of the fortress where concentrated Incursine fire was currently focused. The automation systems were damaged in the initial attack. Someone must physically engage the buffer sequence. Ben straightened, forcing his unstable transformation to solidify through sheer willpower. I'll do it. My dimensional frequency might help stabilize the buffers, and I'm the most likely to survive if the tower collapses. You're barely maintaining your current form, Kai protested. This is suicide, Ben. Not if we work together. Looma interjected. I know the fortress systems better than anyone. We go together. Tennyson provides dimensional stability, I operate the buffer controls. Ben nodded in agreement. Kai, get the key to safety. Use one of the evacuation ships to return to the Authority headquarters. Looma and I will follow once the buffers are activated. Kai looked between them, CL. Early torn between duty to the mission and concern for Ben's condition. The Authority needs to know about this convergence, the Incursines mentioned. It might explain Tempest's overall strategy. All the more reason for you to go. Ben insisted. If something happens to us, at least the key and the information will be safe. After a moment's hesitation, Kai nodded. Fine, but you have exactly 20 minutes before the dimensional collapse reaches critical stage. After that, nothing will survive within a 100-mile radius. Then we'd better hurry, Looma said, already moving toward the passage that led to the upper levels. Ben followed, concentrating on maintaining his increasingly unstable transformation. The dimensional energy he had absorbed in the Nexus chamber continued to affect him, causing periodic fluctuations between solid form and semi-transparent energy states. They fought their way upward through the crumbling fortress, navigating collapsed corridors and battling occasional Incursine troops that had been left behind during the main force's withdrawal. Ben's condition made combat challenging. His strength remained formidable, but the unpredictable phase shifting of his body made consistent contact difficult. How much further? He asked as they emerged onto an exterior battlement. Above them, the fortress's central tower rose another 100 feet, its NT stone now scarred and fractured from the ongoing bombardment. The control center is at the peak, Looma replied, scanning for the safest path upward. The interior stairways have collapsed. We'll need to climb the exterior. Ben assessed the tower's condition with his enhanced perception, noting stress fractures and structural weaknesses. That ship is specifically targeting the tower base. They're trying to bring the whole thing down before we can activate the buffers. Then we climb faster, Looma stated simply, beginning her ascent with the natural skill of a species evolved for such physical challenges. Ben followed, his forearms providing advantages even in his unstable state. They scaled the tower's exterior as the Incursine ship adjusted its firing pattern, now attempting to target them directly. Energy beams lanced past, superheating the ancient stone and creating gaping holes in the structure. Halfway up, disaster struck. A precision shot from the ship struck just below Ben's position, vaporizing the stone handhold he was reaching for. He began to fall, his unstable transformation unable to maintain a proper grip on the tower surface. Looma reacted instantly, nay of her lower arms shooting out to grasp his wrist while her other 3 limbs maintained her position on the tower face. I have you, she shouted against the howling wind. Stabilize your form. Ben concentrated, forcing his transformed body back into full solidity through sheer willpower. The effort sent waves of pain through his system as the dimensional energy fought against his control. He managed to solidify long enough to regain his grip on the tower. Thanks, he gasped as they continued their ascent. Save your gratitude for when we survive this, Looma replied, though Ben detected a note of respect in her tone that hadn't been present before. They reached the tower's peak just as another barrage from the Inkerseen ship struck the structure's base. The entire tower swayed alarmingly, stone groaning under stresses it was never designed to withstand. The control center occupied a circular chamber at the tower's apex, dominated by a crystalline apparatus that hummed with dimensional energy. Looma moved to the controls immediately, her four hands working across different sections of the ancient interface. The system is partially damaged, she reported, frustration evident in her voice. The dimensional buffers will not activate without direct energy transfer from the control matrix to the nexus point. Meaning? Ben asked, bracing himself against a wall as the tower swayed again. Meaning someone needs to physically channel the buffer energy, Looma explained grimly. The conduit mechanism was destroyed in the attack. Ben moved to her side, examining the control matrix with his enhanced perception. The dimensional frequencies flowing through the crystalline apparatus matched those he had experienced in the Nexus chamber, complex patterns designed to stabilize rather than disrupt. I can channel it, he realized. The Infinity Protocol allows me to process dimensional energy, that's how I survived the Nexus vortex. Looma looked at him sharply. The amount of energy required would destabilize your transformation completely. You might not survive the process. Better than the alternative, Ben replied, gesturing toward the view outside WH. Air evacuees were still boarding ships as the fortress crumbled around them. If that nexus point collapses uncontrolled, none of them will make it out in time. The tower shuddered violently, listing G to one side as its structural integrity continued to fail. Looma made her decision quickly, adjusting the control matrix to prepare for Ben's intervention. Place your hands here, she instructed, indicating four crystalline nodes that corresponded perfectly to his Tetraman form. When I activate the sequence, the buffer energy will flow through you to create a stable dimensional field around the nexus point. It should hold long enough for the evacuation to complete. Should, Ben repeated with a wry smile that looked strange on his transformed face. Tetramans don't deal in certainties during battle, Looma replied, her four eyes meeting his with unexpected warmth. Only in courage and honor. You have demonstrated both today, Ben Tennyson. Ben positioned his hands on the nodes, feeling the dimensional energy already beginning to respond to his presence. Ready when you are, Princess. Looma activated the sequence. Immediately, energy surged from the control matrix into Ben's transformed body. The sensation was both familiar and exponentially more intense than what he had experienced in the Nexus chamber, raw dimensional power flowing through him like a conduit, seeking the unstable Nexus point far below. Ben roared in pain as his transformation began to break down, the dimensional energy tearing at the coherence of his form. The Omnitrix symbol on his chest flared with brilliant emerald light, fighting to maintain the integrity of his DNA pattern against the overwhelming forces coursing through him. Through the haze of agony, Ben focused his consciousness on directing the energy, creating the buffer field that would contain the nexus point's collapse. He could perceive the dimensional frequencies extending downward through the fortress, encasing the nexus Hamber in a stabilizing matrix that would prevent catastrophic failure. It's working, Looma called out, monitoring the readouts on the control interface. The buffer field is forming. 60%. 70%. The tower gave a final, shuddering groan as its foundation began to collapse completely. Looma abandoned the controls to brace herself against the chamber wall, but Ben remained connected to the matrix, determined to complete the buffer field despite the structure's imminent failure. Ben, we need to evacuate now, Looma shouted over the deafening sound of stone tearing apart beneath them. Not yet, Ben gasped, his voice barely recognizable as the transformation fluctuated wildly between states. Field at 90%, need 100 for stability. The flow, or beneath them tilted sharply as the tower began its final collapse. Looma moved with incredible speed, wrapping all four arms around Ben and forcibly pulling him away from the control matrix just as the field reached completion. "Hold on to me," she commanded, charging toward the chamber's viewing platform as the room disintegrated around them. With no time for finesse, Looma leapt from the collapsing tower. Ben secured firmly in her grasp. They plummeted through the air as the ancient structure imploded behind them, massive stones raining down in their wake. Ben's transformation finally gave out, emerald light washing over him as he reverted to human form mid-fall. The sudden change nearly broke Looma's grip, but she adjusted instantly, shifting her hold to accommodate his much smaller human body. They were still falling at terminal velocity toward the unforgiving stone of the fortress below. Ben, now back in human form and weakened from the dimensional energy exposure, struggled to activate the Omnitrix again. "Can't transform," he managed, the device on his wrist pulsing with erratic patterns. "Needs time to recharge after the energy surge. Then we do this the Tetraman way," Looma declared, positioning her body beneath his as they fell, using her superior durability to shield him from the coming impact. The crash came with bone-jarring force as they struck a series of descending battlements, each impact slowing their fall incrementally. Looma absorbed the brunt of the damage, her Tetraman physiology withstanding stresses that would have killed a human instantly. Even so, Ben felt ribs crack and muscles tear as they bounced from surface to surface in their uncontrolled descent. They finally came to rest on a lower courtyard, their fall broken by a Decora Tive pool that had survived the bombardment. Looma's armor was shattered in multiple places, purple blood seeping from numerous wounds, but she remained conscious. Ben lay beside her, battered but alive, the Omnitrix on his wrist still cycling through irregular patterns as it attempted to stabilize. "Not the most graceful landing I've executed," Looma admitted, her breathing labored but her tone surprisingly light given their condition. "Still, better than my prom night," Ben managed to joke through the pain, earning a confused look from Looma that quickly transformed into reluctant amusement. The humor was short-lived. Above them, the Inkersine ship repositioned, its weapons systems charging for what would clearly be a final, decisive strike. With the tower destroyed and the buffer field in place around the nexus point, the Inkersines had apparently decided to eliminate the Key's defenders directly. "Can you move?" Looma asked, struggling to her feet despite multiple injuries. Ben attempted to stand but collapsed immediately, his human body having suffered more damage than he initially realized. "Not quickly. The Omnitrix needs time to repair cellular damage before I can transform again." Looma scanned their surroundings, quickly identifying their position relative to the evacuation points. "The nearest ships are half a kilometer away. I can carry you, but not quickly enough to evade that ship's targeting systems." The weapons port on the Inkersine vessel began to glow with building energy. Ben estimated they had seconds at most before it fired. "Go," he told Looma. "You're the princess. Your people need you. I'll find another way out." Looma's expression hardened into one of fierce determination. Tetramans do not abandon allies in battle, especially not those who have fought with honor. She lifted Ben carefully, cradling his injured form against her chest. "We go together or not at all." Before Ben could argue further, the Inkersine ship ed, but the deadly beam never reached them. A blinding flash of energy intercepted the attack, followed by the distinctive sound of advanced engines as a familiar vessel decloaked directly above their position. "Need a ride?" Kai's voice came through Ben's communicator, relief evident in her tone. "Or should I leave you two to your heroic last stand?" The underside of Kai's ship opened, a gravity lift extending down to their position. Looma stepped into the beam with Ben still in her arms, and they were drawn upward into the safety of the vessel's interior. The moment they were aboard, Kai engaged the ship's engines, accelerating away from the fortress as the Inkersine vessel attempted to give chase. The dimensional drive hummed with building energy, preparing for the jump that would take them safely away from Koros. "The key?" Ben asked weakly as Looma set him carefully on a medical berth. "Secure," Kai confirmed from the pilot's station, along with detailed scans of the buffer field you created. "The authorities' scientists will want to study that technology. It might help protect other dimensional nexus points." Looma activated the ship's medical systems, which began diagnosing and treating Ben's injuries. "You should have left when ordered, archaeologist," she noted, though her tone held more respect than criticism. But I am grateful for your disobedience. I've ever been good at following orders that involve abandoning people, Kai replied with a small smile. Dimensional jump in 10 seconds. The Inkerseen ship is still in pursuit, but they won't be able to track us through the dimensional barrier. Ben relaxed slightly as the medical system administered pain relief and began accelerating his body's natural healing processes. 2 keys secured, he murmured. 3 to go. And now we know the Inkerseens call Tempest the Great Unifier, and are working towards something called the Convergence, Kai added. That's valuable intelligence. Looma seated herself beside Ben's berth, her own injuries being treated by a secondary medical unit. Your methods were unorthodox, Tennyson, but effective. My warriors speak of your courage with admiration. When we return to Koros, when this multidimensional conflict is resolved, you will be welcomed as an honorary member of the Red Wind clan. High praise from a Tetraman princess, Kai noted, glancing back from the pilot's controls with an unreadable expression. The dimensional drive engaged fully, the view outside the viewports folding inward as they transitioned between realities. Ben felt the familiar sensation of existing in multiple places simultaneously, though it seemed less disorienting than before. Perhaps his exposure to dimensional energy was increasing his adaptation to such transitions. As they emerged into the space near Authority headquarters, Ben reflected on how quickly his life had changed. From a routine mission against Drive, Onimo to multidimensional defender in less than 24 hours. The Infinity Protocol had transformed not just his alien forms but his understanding of reality itself. Beside him, Looma's presence represented a new dynamic, a warrior princess from another dimension who had fought alongside him with honor and courage. Her respect had been earned through battle, her trust through shared sacrifice. There was something refreshingly direct about Tetraman relationships, Ben realized, built on actions rather than words, on demonstrated character rather than empty promises. And ahead of them waited the search for the remaining keys, the confrontation with Tempest. And whatever this mysterious convergence might be, the multiverse hung in the balance, threatened by forces Ben was only beginning to understand. But for now, as the ship due CKED with Authority headquarters and medical teams rushed to meet them, Ben allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. 2 keys secured, allies gained, lessons learned about his new abilities. It wasn't a bad start for someone who, just yesterday, had been chasing Drive. Onimo through an abandoned plumber outpost. Chapter 2 end. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.